YouTube, it's Becky from Becky Writes, this is Becky Reads, and this is my most anticipated books for the first quarter of 2017. I'm looking at some of the books I am most excited about for January, February, and March. Now these aren't the only exciting books that are coming out in these 3 months, but these are the top 10 that I am most anticipating getting my hands on. The first should come as no surprise, and that is Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken. This is a follow-up to Passenger, which came out last January. I read it last year and gave it 5 stars. This continues the hopping through time adventures of Etta and Nicholas and their friends and enemies as they basically try to survive the world of time traveling and the good people who are in it and the bad people who are in it and the complicated, you don't know who's good and who's evil. I am so excited. I've read the first 5 chapters already actually, and I cannot wait to settle in and finish the whole book. Now moving on to February releases. There are 2 books coming out on February 7th that I'm very excited about. The first one is Wintersong by Jae Jones. Now this is a Labyrinth retelling. Like Labyrinth the movie with David Bowie, this is a Labyrinth retelling and it sounds amazing. It sounds like it has some gothic-y feel to it. This is also a debut novel, I believe, by Jae Jones, so I am very, very excited to pick this up. I am total Labyrinth trash. I grew up watching it because I'm a child of the 80s, so I am very hopeful for a retelling. I'm hopeful that it will honor the spirit of the film, and I'm curious to see how it takes on its own life. The second book that comes out on February 7th is Empress of 1,000 Skies. This is by Rhoda Belleza? I am sure I have totally destroyed her name. I'm very sorry. Empress of 1,000 Skies is basically like a space opera drama with a girl who refuses to marry somebody. She is thought to be presumed murdered, and then there's the guy who everyone thinks murdered her, but he didn't, and then there's like a madman who's orchestrating the whole thing. It just sounds like a big, fabulous space opera, and I don't read a lot of space operas or a lot of science fiction, whether heavy science fiction or light science fiction, so I am excited to pick this up. It sounds brilliant. This is also a debut novel, so I'm excited to pick it up, and that comes out on February 7th. Then on February 9th is perhaps the only non-fantasy-ish book that I am excited about, and that is The Good People by Hannah Kent. Hannah Kent wrote Burial Rites, which was one of my favorite books of 2016, and her second book is being released in the United States on February 9th. Now, if you are lucky enough to live in Australia, you already have this book, but we don't have it yet, so we'll be waiting until February. This is another historical fiction, and it takes place in Ireland in 1825, and it follows, from what I understand, the story of a woman who's lost both her son and one of her grandchildren in a terrible fire, and so she's left caring for a grandchild that I think is mute and is quadriplegic, perhaps, or doesn't have use of his legs and also doesn't speak, and so she decides to try to get the cunning folk, or, you know, the wee folk, the sort of spirits of Ireland. She's going to try to get them to help her. I don't think that this is a magical realism. I think the idea is that, we're looking at people who in that period believed those things to be real, but they aren't necessarily, this isn't necessarily a fantasy story. So I am very curious. Hannah Kent writes beautifully, so like she could write a grocery list and I think I would love it. So I am very excited to finally be getting my hands on her second novel, The Good People, on February 9th. Then on February 21st, the day before my birthday, we are getting the 3rd and final installment of the Shadows of Magic series, and that is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This is the 3rd in the trilogy that includes A Darker Shade of Magic, A Gathering of Shadows, and then A Conjuring of Light. Now, in fairness, this is the only book that's like a sequel to a series where I haven't actually read the series yet. I own the first 2 and I haven't read them. I'm saving to read them in February. But I gave myself permission to include this because I know I'm going to love it. Like, I love V.E. Schwab's other books that I've read, so I'm pretty confident I'm going to love this series, and I'm very excited to not have to wait a long time. I know that there's like a cliffhanger at the end of the second book, and I hate waiting, so I have strategically planned to read these books so I can quickly jump in. This is going to be one of the few books that I definitely am going to be getting for myself. 1, it's going to be a birthday present, and 2, I want to finish a series. So it's going to be fabulous. I already have it on pre-order. Actually, Conjuring of Light and Wintersong are the only 2 I have on pre-order. I already have Wayfarer, so I'm pretty well set so far. Oh, and to backtrack a little bit, February 14th sees another historical fiction, but it has some magical realism as elements, and that is Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. Now this tells the story of Lincoln after the loss of one of his children. This is before the Civil War, and he loses one of his sons, and a bardo is sort of like a mausoleum type place where you lay out a body in preparation for its burial, particularly back before we could like keep bodies cold. They had a special place where you'd lay the body out, and from what I've read, this is going to be about a night that he spends sort of watching and sitting with and saying goodbye to the son who's died, and all the spirits of the bardo in the cemetery kind of gathering around Lincoln. So it's going to have some magical realism elements. I am completely fascinated. I'm a huge fan of historical fiction, although I haven't read a lot lately, and particularly that time period. I think Lincoln is a fascinating figure, and to see this side of him that we don't really see in stories, and to have a little bit of a magical realism element played in, I'm excited. George Saunders is an amazing writer, so February 14th, Lincoln and the Bardo, very excited to check that one out. All right, and the last book coming out in February that I'm excited about is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This book has been getting an amazing amount of press for good and bad reasons. This is the story of a young woman who is a part of the Black Lives Matter movement, who is the only witness to a white cop shooting her black best friend, and the fallout of that, what happens. It has received a lot of critical attention. It has received a lot of mean attention on Twitter, if you have followed Angie Thomas at all. I think it's the kind of book that is absolutely necessary. Is this the kind of book I would normally pick up? No, I don't like contemporaries. I really am an escapist reader, but will I be picking this up because it's an important read that speaks to something important in our lifetime right now? Absolutely. I'm excited to be supporting Angie Thomas. I hope it allows readers a better glimpse into the lives of African Americans who are struggling for equality and struggling under the oppression of a community and a country that thinks of them as second-class citizens still. So I'm very interested in The Hate You Give. It comes out February 28th. It was supposed to come out over the summer, and they've pushed up the publication deadline because it is such an appropriate and necessary book to be reading. I hope all of you guys pick this one up, and maybe we can do a community read of it. The Hate You Give is coming out on February 28th. Moving on to March, we've got 2 books coming out on March 14th that I'm excited about. The first one is called Brothers Ruin. It is by Emma Newman. This is the first in a new trilogy by Tor. Now, this is a story of a sort of industrial revolutionary Britain, and there's still magic, but it's not steampunk. That was one of the things that I pretty picked up. It was industrial revolution with magic, but it wasn't steampunk, and in this world, magic is still needed to help, I don't really know. There's like a society for magic, and this young man is been wanting to get into the society, and so he has to perform some magical feats. He does, but he does them with the help of his sister. And because he uses his sister, he eventually gets found out and everything goes to heck in a handbasket. This sounds fascinating. It is a really interesting time period for this kind of fantasy story. I've seen a lot of fantasy stories that take place in the Victorian and Edwardian eras, but they haven't really touched on the Industrial Revolution around them, so I'm excited to see the blend of magic and industry happening. Tor always releases good books, so I'm excited to pick that up on March 14th. The other March 14th book is The Wanderers by Meg Hawrey, and this is being billed as Station 11 meets The Martian. It is a science fiction story of 3 astronauts who are going to Mars on a mission for very different reasons, and it sounds like it follows sort of their preparation to be getting to Mars and also what happens when they get there, and I think they have some problems. I'm excited because I enjoyed The Martian. I haven't read Station 11 yet. I enjoyed The Martian, and I enjoy character-driven sci-fi. I think that that's where I can get into sci-fi. Like, I loved The Martian because even though there was a bunch of science that made no sense to me, I thought that the main character was so great. I mean, who doesn't love Mark Watney? He's kind of an asshole, but you kind of have to love him, right? Because it's sarcasm and duct tape that saved his life while he was on Mars. So I'm curious to see how 3 characters who are complex in a similar situation kind of make a story. And finally, I have one more book that comes out on March 28th, and that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Now, I loved the first 2 books in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I did not like the 3rd book. In fact, I was so angry about the 3rd book, I have refused to recommend the trilogy to anyone else because I was so completely disappointed. I didn't think it was well done. I didn't think that she honored the story she was telling. It was just a problem. It really should have been 2 separate books. It should have been a 4-part series. Anyway, I can go into that another time. I loved Laini Taylor's writing style in spite of the fact that I was disappointed in how she finished her series. So I'm curious to give her another shot. Strange the Dreamer basically is about what happens after there's been a war between gods and humankind. There's a hero that arises, and that's basically all I know about it. Her mythology building is so amazing, and her writing style is so unique that I'm willing to give her another shot. So Strange the Dreamer comes out at the end of March 28th. I'm hoping that this new book can be an opportunity for me to change my feelings about her writing, because I was so frustrated with the end of the last trilogy. But I did love the writing style, and again, her world building and her mythology building is incredible, and she does create great characters, so I am excited to check that one out at the end of March. Now that is it, you guys. Comment down below and let me know if you have an anticipated book for the winter months that is not on this list. I know there are some contemporaries that are coming out that people are excited about, but I don't really read contemporary, so these are the ones I am most looking forward to. Hope you guys are all doing well, and I will see you soon. Bye!